social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income, I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output.
Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a great Friday afternoon as we get ready to go into the weekend. And so, what you were just taking a look at was what would be the next generation of the Atlas robot. Now, some of you probably who are maybe into robots or just by chance happen to see the Atlas robot, the past generation of the Atlas robot, which was this big bulky thing. It was running on hydraulics, right, which wasn't practical. And there have been changes made in this latest generation, as you got to see. This is an electric power robot. It is very versatile, great amount of dexterity. It can recalibrate its exercises, right, on the job, in the workforce as such. And so, and then also you got to see a video with the world-renowned Elon Musk telling you how, because of this great displacement of work that will occur relative to these robots, that your job might be at stake, right? At some point, your job might be at stake, and it's going to make it more difficult for you to earn in the workplace. And it's going to be a lot more efficient just for your employer to hire a robot for countless reasons. There are many reasons why you would prefer a robot over a human worker. And that gives humanity a choice, right? A fork in the road. You can, from what we're showing you, come to a few conclusions, right? Either you could conclude that this is an eventuality and something's going to have to be done about it, and getting that plan in action typically is going to work better if you get it in action well before the last minute when catastrophe hits, right? Or you could just conclude none of it is true and that your job is safe and that you won't be replaced by a robot and that you have nothing to worry about, right? Those are ultimately the two choices you have. Now, how important is contemplating something like this? I don't know, right? That depends on the person. If your livelihood, right? If feeding your families, if taking care of your health, if surviving is important to you, then this should rise to the top of some of your most important issues, right? Should probably be somewhere in that top 5. You know, should be somewhere around if the environment goes bad and we can't breathe. If the water goes bad, we can't drink. It should be somewhere around if World War III breaks out and nuclear bombs go off and we discontinue as a species, right? And it should be somewhere near around the economy going full stop and being a very dystopian-like, devastating economy where we can barely survive, where you can barely make enough to survive. And some people might be in a similar situation even now, today, as we speak. So I think it should be somewhere along those lines. Now, of course, some people Uh, either they're just not aware of this, uh, or they're, you know, as human beings, we tend to um, ignore a lot of warning signs, right? Uh, I'll just give a brief example of what I'm talking about, right? So we've had these over the last year or so, these very strange, unusual uh, uh, congressional hearings about UAPs, right? That's those flying things that they're seeing in New Jersey now. Some people think they're just spy craft from China or Iran. Some people, the only problem with that theory is that apparently they've been reporting these things probably the last 20 years and further than that. These drone-like things, right? And we know drone technology, for the most part, the kind of drones we see in the night sky now are, it's pretty much, new technology, right? For the most part. But they've been reporting seeing weird craft UAPs for the last 20 years, right? And, just modern times, right? Um, and so what happens is we also get all these whistleblowers, top government level people with high clearance levels, right? Who say that we may even have non-human intelligence, right? Meaning that whatever these things are, they might not even be related to human design, human creation. And we may not even know the origins of this. Whichever you choose to believe, right? Whether it's a big hoax or charade, whatever the case may be, uh, the general public still gets up, goes to work every day. If it is Armageddon, uh, their life carries on just like nothing's happening. And that's a very dangerous situation to be in. And when we discuss projects like Bitcoin MYK, and we discuss ideas like universal basic income and automation and artificial intelligence taking over humans, displacing them in the workplace and economy, and even as a species, right? We do our brain goes into a similar lockbox, right? Where, we just can't do anything with it, so we just put it to the side. Despite how critical it is, how dangerous it is, and how necessary it is to do something about it, right? So I say all of that just to set up the mental faculties, right? The mental landscape of what a project like Bitcoin MYK is about. That even when we talk about uh, gains today, it being up 140%, that many in cryptocurrency, many in the world who don't understand blockchain technology, who just think it's some type of pyramid scheme to make money, right? Don't understand what the technology does, what exactly it's for, why it was created, and the many uses of it. A lot of times people just look at cryptocurrency as a casino, right? As how much am I going to make today? Let me put $1 in and get $1 out. They don't look at the importance of the system itself of cryptocurrency. I think what was so important about Bitcoin, especially initially, when it was only like a penny, right? And people weren't thinking about Bitcoin in terms of how much they can make off it if they could get rich off it, right? The main idea of Bitcoin was after the 2008 huge financial crisis we had, where all these huge central banks went under, right? The big issue we had was the idea of the instability of these systems with our money, right? How fragile it was, how it could collapse, right? And that the most important thing would be an alternative to it, right? So there was a mantra going on with Bitcoin based on freedom of people in control of their own money, not based on can Bitcoin hit $1 million, right? You know, But based on how you're going to use these things, right? And so I want you all who are watching this video in a comparable fashion take the importance of what would have been a Bitcoin after 2008 to the importance of a project like Bitcoin MYK on what to do about looming automation and AI threats to the human being in the workplace and the economy, right? And that's very important because in doing so, right, because what we get is we get a lot of people talking about, well, we like the idea of the project, but we're just not making enough money. It's not enough trade volume, right? Uh, Again, this is very similar to 2008 Bitcoin when it was a penny, right? When Bitcoin was a penny, people weren't really making money. The development teams that were engaged in it weren't making money, but they knew it was something special about Bitcoin. Bitcoin MYK is in the same capacity because as we look at the data of Bitcoin MYK, it is doing exactly what we thought it would do, and that was the growth rate, right, or the network effect, right, or what is known as Metcalfe's law, meaning the more people are pulled into a network and become part of a network, the more valuable it becomes, right? So as the growth rate increases, and just meaning people coming in with accounts using Bitcoin MYK, as that increases, right, the value of Bitcoin MYK starts to go up, right? So even if you look at the price of Bitcoin MYK, you go back maybe 4 or 5 months ago, uh, it was about 1,000% less than it is now, which means it's went up 1,000%, right? And that trajectory seems to be fixed. It seems to get more difficult and more difficult for it to not do that and not to maintain these price jumps it makes, right? Now, I believe that's tied directly to growth. Some people say it's tied to inflation. I don't think it's tied to inflation. I think it's tied to the number of value that goes into the project over the years, right? I think it's tied to the growth rate. Just the more people coming in, changing hands with it, and the velocity of the currency itself, right? And although this is on a small scale, uh, when you blow this up as a concept, it is clear what's happening, right? And when you put all of the principles of Bitcoin MYK into this, and you put all of the factors into it, you see that this is what it is. Now, let's talk a little bit about volume because that always seems to be the number one concern with Bitcoin MYK. So a few things, right? If you look at the trajectory of early Bitcoin from 2008, or rather 2009, 2010, up till present, up to it hitting its $100,000 value from a penny, right? It's like a 10 million% return since then, right? If you had any Bitcoin since it started, right? If you had any Bitcoin MYK over the last 3 or 4 months, you'd be up 1,000%, right? But if you look at the trajectory of Bitcoin, right, what you get is you get a penny Bitcoin, you get very little trade volume, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, low millions of dollars, 10 millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. You get all the way up until you get to trillions of dollars, right? But look what happened. What happens with Bitcoin through the ages, right? What happened was you went from very little volume, market cap, and trade volume to this progression up, right? And that happened based on the story of Bitcoin, right? The important factors it addresses. Go back to Bitcoin MYK here, right? What are the important factors it's addressing? It's addressing automation. What are you going to do with these people? What are they going to be doing? How are you going to facilitate the trade of a universal basic income cryptocurrency, right? How are you going to get it in people's hands and distribute it? All those things have to be accounted for, right? And there has to be a clear plan on how that gets done. Because if it isn't, right, then you have no solution for universal basic income. You can try it at the government level, which a lot of people don't like. But even if you try it at the government level, which likely will happen as well, it could be even more catastrophic, right? It could be more devastating, especially if it's done with very little planning and research and data, which we don't have a great deal of, especially in huge, large models and nations. Um, so this is very important, guys, right? This is one of the most important things you're ever going to discuss in cryptocurrency, out of cryptocurrency, in your personal lives, etc., because it's going to impact you personally. So we believe Bitcoin MYK is on that similar trajectory with the growth. But to underlying volume, if you look at the rate at which Bitcoin jumped up in value, right? You notice something, right? Check this out. Now, it was a lot easier for Bitcoin in a low trade volume situation to go from $1 to $2, from $2 to $20, to $20 from $40. You see what's happening there, right? The low volume is in direct correlation to the amount of value and price that Bitcoin can move, right? So as Bitcoin got to the $1 trillion mark, right? Look how difficult it became for Bitcoin price to double, right? You know, it was hovering around $60,000, for years, right? Actually, it's been hovering around $60,000 for the last 4 or 5 years, right? It's been hitting values like that. Am I correct in that? Or at least the $20,000 mark. And so it was at $60,000, I think, a few years back, right? But look how difficult it's become for it to go from 60,000 to 100,000, right? Not very easy, right? As the volume increases, the rate at which cryptocurrencies and value can go up slows, right? So that's to say that at this stage in Bitcoin MYK's life, right, that how it's moving up 1,000% and doing all those fantastical jumps like that, that it's only able to do that, and the opportunity only lies in that scope in which the volume is low. In other words, if the volume is high, if it's very high, the opportunity is gone. So the people who ask for high volume, I just want you all to understand and be very mindful that high volume is also going to suggest very limited price gains. Whereas now, low volume suggests great opportunity for price movement, which could be huge movements, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, million%, right? Remember, Bitcoin went from 1 penny to a 10 million% gain today. If you go back to the beginning. Now, does everybody have Bitcoin from the beginning? No. But it's possible that some people do, right? So that's the understanding of volume. Now let's take a look at something else.